In this series, we're building this stocks and finance research app, and I'm to the point where I want to be able to add in charts to our interface to be able to report on things like revenue, net income, free cash flow on any sort of company that you look up. Well, we're building this in Expo and React Native. So for these charts, I need them to be cross-platform, where they'll work on iOS, Android, and even the web. Thankfully, there is a great library from Formidable called Victory. And Victory is a charting library, has support for all kinds of various charts here of pretty much everything I think we'll need. And the great thing about it is completely cross-platform. If we dive into the docs here, they have everything you need to make this run on the web, and then they also have a package for the exact same API, but everything running in React Native. So in this video, we're going to go through how to use this package on both web and native, and integrating that with the GraphQL time series API we built out in the last video for reporting on a company's revenue. So let's jump in. All right, let's see. So in React Native, in Expo, I've built out this very basic interface prior to going live here. So we have a text entry, we have a button, and we're going to hit go. And from there, I want to be able to use our GraphQL API and pull down the time series data that we built out last time. So just a very quick tour on this. If you're not familiar with React Native and how these components might look, it's very similar to React for Web, just some differences. So for styles, use stylesheet, which comes from React Native, stylesheet.create. And this will give you, let me make sure I'm not covering up the code here. This will give you the ability to, through a big JavaScript object, create the styles that you need. The property names, you'll notice, come from CSS names. So it's not exactly CSS, but it is very similar in that regard. And then for our views here, I have a scroll view, which it contains everything. So in order to make something scroll in React Native, you actually have to tell it this is an area that can scroll. I have a couple of different views. Think of views kind of like divs from the web. You can use them all over the place. Safe area view is a handy component that allows you to make sure that you're not going within the range of, especially the iOS, I don't even know what this is called, the status bar area, as well as dynamic island or the notch or a hole punch or whatever you have on your device. Safe area view helps you to avoid those areas. So we can see here on web, we have a very short little gray area up here that our background is in. But then in iOS, it's actually much taller to avoid this status bar. And we have a text input, which is our white text input here. We have a pressable end text. So there is a React Native button component, but it doesn't really allow for much styling. So if you want to do your own custom stylized button, then the best way to go about that is using the pressable component and surrounding that, or putting inside of that a text component, and whatever other views you need to accomplish that. So right now, all this screen does is, as I type out a symbol, it echoes whatever I'm typing to the screen. So let's add in our GraphQL query, and then so we can get our data, and then we'll add in our charts that will work here on both web and iOS. All right, so jumping into where we left off last time, we created this query. So my server's up and running right now. We created this GraphQL query where we can look up a particular symbol. In this case, we are passing in down here Apple, and we'll get back that symbol as well as a time series data, an array, of its revenue. So we can choose whether we're looking at quarterly revenue or annual revenue, and then for each data point, we'll get a date and a value. And we can see that here. So we've looked up Apple, we're getting the symbol Apple back, and then for each quarter, going back for 5 years, I believe, then we're getting its revenue back. So let me bring this over into our Expo app and add this query into our component here. Okay, so I'm going to add this. We have use state here. I'm going to add this here. So let's do use query. And this is, in fact, a query, not a mutation. And we'll use our GQL template literal. So we have a query. I'm going to call this lookup. This is just a friendly name that you can choose. So we're passing in a symbol, which is a string. We're running the lookup query, and we're getting back the symbol, revenue, date, and value. In a future video, I'm going to do the GraphQL code gen here on the front end so we can get nice types back from this data. But we'll just use this for now. Okay, so we have our query. Let's assign this to the variables that we need. So query brings back data as well as loading as well as an error state. So if we have an error, let's go ahead and return that. I'm just going to return a text view with the error message itself. So if we have any sort of error, we'll return that. Otherwise, I want to check for a loading state. So let's see. So we have our text down here. Let's say if we are loading, then we will just put in some text here that says loading. Otherwise, let's take a look at something else. Okay, so let's take our data here, and I just want to take a look at what this is, what data we're getting back here. So let me go to, instead of symbol, let's put in our data just as a string, and I'll do json.stringify here so we can see what data comes back. Now, I need some way to pass in this variable, and actually, let's see, this is a query. So I need to be able to trigger this query whenever I push this button. Now, use query as a hook automatically runs when this component loads. But I actually don't want to run this query until I push this button. So instead of use query, I really need to use lazy query. And lazy query provides us a tuple back. Really, it's an array, but in the style of a tuple, the first item is some sort of execute function. So I'm going to say exec query. Great. Okay, now on the pressable, let's say on press, we are going to have a callback function here that executes this query with the variables of symbol, which is the symbol that we put in up here. So let's save our work here and see how far we got and see if we have any bugs so far. So I'm going to put in AAPL for Apple, going to hit go, and boom, we have some data. So I hit go here, that ran execute query, went to our backend, sent this query off, and returned to us all of the data that we're expecting here. Fantastic. Okay, this is ugly though, not a real great way to visualize what's going on. So now we can bring in our charting library, Victory, and add in some charts here. Oh, but first, let me make sure. Okay, great, yes, works on iOS too. Okay, let's take a look at our charting library. So if we go to the docs here, we can see that we'll need to install Victory Pretty simple. However, the way that victory charts work is that on native, instead of using victory, use victory native. So on web, we need to use one package, and on native, we need to use iOS and Android, we need to use a different package. So how can we do that in the same app? Well, Expo and React Native offer a really great way to split this up, and let me show you. So what we need to do is we actually need to install both of these packages, as well as this package called React Native SVG. Now, it has a little note in here that we don't need to do this if we have an Expo version such and such or higher. I found that I actually do need to install this. So you might want to check if you're doing this. Try it first without installing this package, but I did find that I did need to install this package. So let's install Victory, Victory Native, and React Native SVG. So I'm going to go to my terminal here, and we will run an Expo install Victory, Victory Native, and React Native SVG. So that's going to download and install there. Great. So I need to be able to dynamically either import chart components from the Victory package or the Victory Native package, depending on the platform we're on. So let me head over to an example. On this Getting Started page, there's a nice example that's very close to what we want here. I'm going to scroll down to number 7 here, Add a Theme. So this is a great example because we've got quarters over time, we have dollar amounts up and down. Good starting point for displaying a revenue graph. So over here on the source, I can see that there's a data array, we have a quarter, we have earnings, and then we have the charting components that's required to build up this chart. So let me copy this in to our components here. And what we'll do, I'm going to go ahead and just copy this in for now. And I'm going to call this chart data instead of data. And then let me bring in our Victory components. And instead of stringifying our data, this is where we will put our Victory charts. So I'm going to wrap this in a view. I'm not sure if we'll have multiple components here, but I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this for now. Okay, so when I import this, Victory chart needs to come from one of two packages, either Victory or Victory Native. So what we can do on Expo is I'm going to create kind of an in-between module that can decide which place this should come from. So I'm going to create a modules directory, and inside of that I'm going to create a file called charts. I can also create a file called charts.web.ts. And automatically, Expo and React Native, because this file is the same name other than web, you could also use iOS here or Android here, it will determine which file to use depending on the platform. So the string immediately prior to the file extension here is a platform indicator for us to switch out files based upon the platform. So on the charts or on the default platform, which is anything other than web, we can use the Victory Native package. So we've got Victory Chart, Victory Axis, and Victory Theme. So I can say export such and such from Victory Native, because this is the native platform. So let's do Victory Chart, Victory Theme, And what was the other one? Victory axis. We'll probably end up exporting most things. Okay, so I'm going to save that. So that's what we'll use on native. But for web, instead of just exporting those from Victory Native, we'll export those from Victory. Now what we can do is when we are importing these components, we'll import them from our module, and then the correct underlying package will be used on the correct platform. So let's check that out. So let's go here and import our necessary packages. So import from ..module/charts, and we'll import axis, chart, and theme. I forgot bar. Didn't seem like enough. Victory bar. Be sure and do that in all places. Victory bar. And import that. Victory bar. Okay, let me save this. And we do have a chart displaying on both web and iOS here. We're missing some data though. So I changed this data attribute name to chart data. Let me go down here and change this here as well. So chart data and hit save. So there we go. We have charts running on both web and iOS. And if I had the Android simulator running, they'd be running in there as well. So, I mean, this is incredibly powerful and really super amazing that we're able to do this. Now, let me stress, this is not a web view running in iOS here. This is real native components. So that's pretty cool. All right, so we have our toy data from the Victory example. Let's modify this and use the data we're getting back from Apollo and GraphQL. So let's explore a little bit here and adjust our views. Let's explore a little bit here and start manipulating what we need. So our chart data is an array of quarter and earnings. So rather than hard code this here, let's utilize the data that we are getting back. So if there is data, then we're going to manipulate that. Otherwise, we're going to use an empty array. So our chart data is going to be data.lookup, which is the name of our query here, .revenue, .map, because that's going to be an array. So we're going to map over all of the data points that we're getting back. So let's do a date and a, I guess value. I guess actually that should be just fine there. Yeah, we'll just do data.revenue. See where we go. Okay, now instead of our axes being quarter and earnings, we're going to do date and value. Okay, so let's save that and see where we get. We have nothing. Okay, let's see what we might be doing wrong here. So we've got chart data, date, value. We haven't run anything. So let me do we don't have any data yet. APL go. Excellent. Okay, getting closer. So I hadn't run anything to get data back yet. Perfect. Okay, a little messy, but let's work through it. So the first thing I want to do is adjust our x-axis ticks down here, our data points that we have for this. And I dug through the Victory documentation a little bit before this video. And so let's go through this. So this victory axis component is where we are controlling the ticks down here. So we've got tick values, which we actually don't need to have anymore. So I'm going to delete that. But we do need to have a tick format. So instead of saying that this is quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4 manually, let's format the dates that we're getting back. So what we're getting back from our API is a string representation of the date, an ISO string representation of the date. So I'm going to use, do we have Luxon installed? We do not. We're going to install my very favorite datetime package ever created, Luxon, the best package for dates ever. It's really good. Okay, Expo, install Luxon. Luxon, Luxoff. Okay, so with Luxon, we get a datetime class, datetime from Luxon. Okay, so datetime from, oh, we don't have types for this, do we? Okay, let's install the types for Luxon as well. So npm install capital D for developer dependencies and types Luxon. Brad says, appreciate you uploading so much lately. You have such wealth of knowledge. Thank you, Brad. I hope you're having a great day. Okay, so we have installed Luxon. We've installed the types for Luxon. So let's continue on. So we're formatting our x-axis ticks. That's where we were. So from ISO, this is actually going to be a function. So tick format gives us the value that it's formatting. So in this case, we're getting the date back. So I'm going to say we're getting date, but it's as a string, because that's what we're getting from the API. So from ISO date string, and then I'm going to call the function toLocale string. And we're going to use the month short version and the year numeric. Okay, let's save that. I have a bunch of invalid date times here, but let's pull in some data. APL, go. A little messy. So we have a lot of ticks down here. So we need to adjust this label format. So also within victory axis here, we have tick format. There is another prop here called tick label component. And this is where we can customize a component for this label that will allow us to do alignment and angles and all that sort of thing. For this, we're going to pull in, let's go to the victory documentation, the victory label component right here. So victory label has a bunch of different things like this that allows us to put labels on an angle, have backgrounds, multi-line, styles, all sorts of stuff. So I haven't pulled in the label component yet, so we need to go to our charts module and make sure that we're exporting that for both web and native. So let's export the victory label component for web, the victory label component for native, and we should be good to go there. So victory label from our charts module. So we're going to say, let's start with an angle of, is it negative 45. So let's again pull some data in here, and we've got this. Excellent. So we have an angle, slightly more readable now. Let's make the font size a little smaller. So let's do style, and then we can say font size, and we'll choose 8. It's interesting that the web isn't keeping my state, but iOS is. Okay, so that's a little bit better. We've got our angled labels going on here. But as you can see, like, check this out right here. I don't know if you can, it's a little small, but can I zoom? No, zooming on that is not helping. Our labels are actually centered aligned with the tick, and so this September 2022 label looks like it's the second tick, but it's actually the first one. So it's aligned to the center rather like than the end of the label. So there is a property on Victory Label here called text anchor, and I'm going to choose the end of the text. So that's where it will anchor to the tick. So let's hit go here. It's looking much better already. So we've got September 22, June 2022, etc. Looks like our data is in reverse order though. So 2018, the old stuff is over on the right-hand side, and the new stuff's on the left. So we need to reverse that. So in our chart data here, we're doing data.lookup.revenue. Now, the simple solution you might think would be to call reverse here, because revenue is an array and we can call reverse on it. However, one thing I don't like about this JavaScript API, this is destructive. So this is a mutable API, and it is reversing the underlying array here. So instead of doing just that, I'm going to copy this array by using our array and spread syntax to copy this first, and then reverse the copy of our array. So let me save that. Okay, Apple, go. Okay, so we've reversed our array. The Apple revenue is now going in the up direction, which is what you would expect from Apple. And we've got our ticks that are aligned at the end here. Now let's check out the prices. The Apple prices are in the B's, in the billions, maybe even, are they in the trillions, the revenue? Let's see. Okay, so we've got our tick format here, and we're dividing our value by 1,000 to do K here. So if we wanted to do millions, we just need to add 3 zeros on there. Hit save. So if a company's revenue is in the millions, this would be a nice way to see that. Apple's a little higher than that. Let's go to B's, add 3 more zeros, hit save. And here we go. So we've got 20 billion, 40 billion, 60 billion, 80 billion. So we can see in billions the amount the revenue Apple has, how it's growing over time. So what we would really want to do in reality, not every company will be in the billions of revenue. We're going to end up, I'm not going to do it in this video, but we're going to end up wanting to make this label dynamic so that if a company has sub $1 billion of revenue, we're going to want to make this label say in the millions. But I think we're doing pretty good here. Let me check my notes and see if there was anything else we wanted to add. I think that was about it here. So we've got, let's check out a couple of other companies actually. Let's look at Tesla. So we've got Tesla's revenue. It's even sharper up and to the right. Excellent. Let's go to iOS. Let's check out Microsoft here. So we have Microsoft's revenue nearly in a straight line. Extremely predictable, also in the billions. Let's check out Google's revenue. Google doesn't have that. Okay, so that's probably something to do, some sort of issue I have on the backend API for Google. Okay, doing GOGL works. There are multiple classes of stocks for Google, so that's something I'll need to look at on the backend. We've got Google, Microsoft, Apple, Tesla, all loading the revenue charts here. So this is a very basic intro, but it gives you the idea of how you would go about being able to display charts on web, iOS, Android, any platform, exact same API, but using two different packages, using these module files, either .web or not .web, to switch out packages depending on the platform, utilizing our GraphQL API to execute queries based upon text inputs, manipulating data. Pretty good start. So we'll continue to build out this stocks and finance research app. Hope you're enjoying this series, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.